Anime is a form of art. As much of a cringy weeb statement as that is, it is most certainly true. It has given us countless masterpieces of cinema that we have cherished for years and decades now. Whether it's Makoto Shinkai's brilliant visuals in Your Name and Weathering With You, Naoko Yamada's stories of perseverance in human relationships in A Silent Voice, Tamako Love Story, and Listen the Bluebird, or the countless masterpieces of Hayao Miyazaki and Studio Ghibli, anime resonates with nearly every single person on this planet. Series like Dragon Ball, One Piece, Naruto, Pokemon, Attack on Titan, and My Hero Academia have reached nearly every corner of the globe at this point and have even started their own waves in pop culture in general. It is becoming harder and harder every day to deny that anime's influence is not just growing, but expanding at a rate that we can't even comprehend. It is no longer the niche genre of film and TV that it used to be. It is now the pinnacle for which animators and directors can showcase the best of their creativity to the world. Even today, countless directors are pushing the limits of creativity in the genre further than they have ever been pushed before. The previously mentioned Naoko Yamada and Makoto Shinkai are just a couple of names in the ring at the moment that continue to find new ways to express emotion, display human relationships, and show the limitless boundaries of beauty that this genre has the potential to reach. However, there is one name yet to be mentioned that I think is taking the genre in a direction that may change not just the industry of anime, but the entirety of cinematic storytelling as we know it. That man is Masaaki Yuasa. His work on series such as The Tatami Galaxy, Ping Pong the Animation, Devilman Crybaby, The Night is Short, Walk On Girl, and Ride Your Wave has created almost an entirely separate subgenre of visual storytelling in anime that has almost never been seen before. Yuasa does this through a number of different directorial styles, but his prominent trait in his work is his over-the-top visuals that create a sense of brilliant imagination and awe. Yuasa's brilliant storytelling has allowed him to push the boundaries of narrative storytelling through animation to places that it has never been pushed before. But nowhere is his style more clear than in the 2020 hit Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken. Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken focuses on three girls as they make anime and the troubles that they have in the process. Yuasa uses his style in this anime to tell not just a wonderful narrative of the limitless boundaries of imagination, but to write a love letter to the one thing most crucial to creativity. Yuasa uses Eizouken to write a love letter to the creative process, and it is the most beautiful, well-constructed love letter written in the history of not just anime, but in the history of cinema as well. Firstly, I think it's extremely important to try to apply some sort of definition to Yuasa's otherwise undefinable style. As impossible as it may seem to describe Yuasa's visuals apart from pretty batshit crazy, it's important to try to define it so we can better explore the storytelling aspects that come as a result of it later on. To do this, I don't actually want to explore any of his best works, but instead I want to look at perhaps his worst work to date in Japan Sinks 2020. Now, if you've watched my channel for a while now, you'll probably know that Japan Sinks is, well, it's, I'm not very fond of it, to put it in simple terms. If you want to know a bit more as to why, go watch my video on Japan Sinks, but I'll summarize a bit here. The characters of Japan Sinks are just far too unbearable to listen to at some points. The emotional climaxes of a lot of scenes have little to no weight in them, and, well, the cult plot exists. But above all else, the one thing I think I don't like about this series is that, in my opinion, it does not feel like a series that Yuasa's style fits. With the exception of perhaps Ride Your Wave, which even still has elements of Yuasa's style, all of Masaaki Yuasa's works take place in settings that are visually stunning, over the top, and awe-strikingly imaginative. In Japan Sinks, the setting is a bit over the top, but really, at the end of the day, it's just modern-day Japan during an apocalyptic-level world event. However, the one thing that shines through amongst all of this that I think made people so attached to the series in the first place was its grounded, albeit annoying, characters that tie us down to earth while everything around us is in chaos. In Japan Sinks, the characters are just average, everyday people who, for the most part, knew each other before the apocalypse started. They're everyday people, which gives us stakes and something to care about as we can see ourselves in their very same situation. Take a look at Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken and you'll see a very similar sentiment. But of course, obviously, it is different in terms of what it does for the story. While Japan Sinks ties us down to give us perspective in the apocalypse occurring around us, Yuasa instead ties us down in Eizouken in order to give a better perspective in terms of visualizing a core aspect of the story, which is imagination. While our characters do take us on wild trips of the imagination, there's also characters like Kanamori that tie us to the real world and give us something to relate to. We've all wanted to follow a creative endeavor with all of our hearts, but Yuasa reminds us through the struggle of these characters that the reality is that money and time are very real constraints. So the TLDR of all of that is that Yuasa's style is indeed a focus on over-the-top and exaggerated visuals, but also one that is focused on grounding these visuals with characters that we can relate to in the real world. It allows for him to focus on making his works beautiful while also focusing on telling a story in that beauty that we can relate to, grounding it for us, the audience. It creates a sense of wonder that seems almost out of reach, but Yuasa reminds us that within all of us is that same wonder that we can reach for. He reminds us that through the power of imagination, we can reach not just the beauty he has shown us on the screen, but that we can reach further beyond even that. Eizouken is the embodiment of this message. Eizouken's beautiful visuals are a result of not just Yuasa, but the characters that we see and relate to on screen. These are three ordinary girls that go through the everyday turmoils of being an artist. They experience problems that we've all experienced in our own pursuits of what we love. They run into the unfortunate realities of money and the ticking clock of time, and how no matter how much we may have of either of them, we will always find flaws in the works that we make. But Yuasa reminds us that it is because of this undying desire to perfect and strive for that wonder that seems so distant that we continue to pursue what we love. It's that drive to make our imagination reality, to make visions become beautiful moments of film, to make the beauty of art form in front of our own very eyes. Eizouken is a love letter to that drive that makes us follow that beauty. I talk a lot on this channel about how character relationships can shape not just the characters of a given story, but also that very story itself and the message at its core. In Yuta Camp, it was about how Rin and Nadeshiko's mutual relationship of understanding established Yuta Camp's theme of loneliness. I draw a comparison to that video, which go watch that if you haven't, shameless plug, because I think Eizouken pulls off a very similar motif, just with a different theme behind it. Yuta Camp uses relationships to show us that social preference is more of a spectrum than it is two-sided, while Eizouken uses it to show the individuality of the creative process. It uses these characters and how they interact to show different aspects of the creative process, but also the common cause that they all pursue. Each character represents a different aspect of the artist. Kanamori is the aspect of realism that not only keeps us going, but also pushes us to go further than we have before. Mizusaki is the perfectionist that seeks to polish every single detail because not even the best is good enough. Asakusa is the very embodiment of imaginative creativity that is the essence at the core of art. Each character possesses a quirk within them that pushes the other further, and each of them also possesses their own flaws. In episode 11, Each Other's Existence, Asakusa recalls how Kanamori and Asakusa first met. Not only does the scene wonderfully portray to us the vast differences that these characters actually share, but it also shows us how two parallel opposites can come together under one common cause. Kanamori says herself that on the surface level, these are two characters that would likely never have spoken to one another if not forced to. Kanamori is cold on the outside, while Asakusa is introverted and doesn't do well with strangers. However, this scene shows us that two people who may not be friends can still come together under the promise of achieving a similar goal in common. For Asakusa, she knows that making anime takes money, and she therefore must make money to continue to do what she loves. For Kanamori, she knows that money is the one thing that keeps businesses afloat, projects moving, and partnerships renewing. This episode and this scene in particular shows us not just that two people can find common ground in the least likely of places, but it also highlights the importance in finding such people to begin with. Without Kanamori, Asakusa would have nobody to push her to further heights of imaginative creativity, meaning the Eizouken club likely would have not existed to begin with. Without Mizusaki, Asakusa wouldn't have somebody to throw ideas off of, to stack upon. She wouldn't have the ability to speak her ideas into reality. All of these characters not only share a common interest, but they also rely upon each other to seek out that common interest. They all wish to find that unspoken region of imagination or wealth or perfection that was once thought to never be possible. They all wish to pursue their lives to the fullest and to find the happiness within them that most people wouldn't find until it was too late. They all share the one thing most in common and most important in not just the creative process, but also humanity: the pursuit of passion. Without this pursuit, we would simply be stuck, never improving and never gaining any ground on doing what we love. We would find that our work becomes monotonous, boring, and sluggish. Without passion, without people to share a common interest and to rely upon to seek this passion, there is nothing. It is only when we find these people in our lives and pursue this passion with them by our sides as friends, no, as comrades, that we find how important this pursuit is. We find out that it drives us to limits that we never thought possible. It shows us that passion is the one thing that keeps us striving to improve. Eizouken is a love letter to the pursuit of passion. Above all else in Eizouken I've talked about so far, the one thing that makes this show so appealing is how it accurately portrays the creative process. Asakusa's wild imagination shows us just how sporadic this process can be, while Mizusaki shows us how we all have the ability to strive for perfection in our works. All of the visuals are almost otherworldly, and the setting of this town is in a place that seems familiar yet is structurally very unique to the settings of modern-day Japan. It is an over-the-top imitation of the real world, which helps to ground it for us to be able to relate to these characters and the story that they follow while still establishing over-the-top visuals. Even some of the music and sound effects are made mostly by the voice actors themselves to sell home that childlike wonder that imagination takes us. But I think the one thing that Eizouken showcases above all else is how uncontrollable and yet rewarding this process is. And there's one episode that I think showcases this best. Episode 6, Let's Do Better Than Last Time, focuses a lot on Asakusa's first steps and struggles of becoming an anime director. In a sense, she's being challenged from multiple fronts. Her introverted self finds it hard to showcase her work with the fear of criticism. In this case, the art club who they hired to help them with backgrounds questions a lot of the groundwork for the visuals that Asakusa has laid down. But apart from her struggles of being extremely introverted, she also has to deal with the struggles of being able to keep her imagination grounded so that she can explain it to others. This is most certainly something that collaborative art brings about in the real world, especially for a character like Asakusa, and as it happens in the show, demotivation is something that almost 99% of the time will follow. Asakusa begins to question the very foundations for the anime she laid down for herself in the first place. Does the robot make sense? Is there logic to the story at hand? Is the idea of a robot in itself completely unrealistic? Will my direction be good enough? It's natural. We all realize at some point that what we're working on may not make the most sense in the real world. We realize that some things are too big to look past. We realize we may not be good enough. However, Kanamori says the one thing in this scene we all need to remember when pursuing art.
他人なんて関係ない。あんたはあんたが満足できるロボットを好き勝手描く以外の選択肢はないんすよ。
While we may not all be trying to make an anime about a robot fighting a giant crab, we can all certainly use the advice of Kanamori. Doubt and motivation that comes from that self-doubt is something we all experience at some point along the creative process. I experienced it when I made this video, my Yuricamp video, and every video that came before it. It feels suffocating, like you can't breathe for days at a time until you find some sort of a semblance of idea. But the one thing most important above all else is that we strive not to please everybody else, but to please solely ourselves. After all, art is the most subjective thing in the world. We give our own art meaning. Our work is only in trouble if we believe it's in trouble. That barrier may be hard to break, but Yuasa shows us that even though it may break at random, as long as we strive for the vision we set before ourselves, there is no way to be dissatisfied. We can't ignore our own self-doubt, but we can learn to live with it. It's only natural that we may have self-doubts about ourselves in the creative process. It's in human nature. But so long as we can take even one step towards our goals set before us, we may realize the creative process is not frustrating, but beautiful. It shows us that creativity may come with its own caveats of doubt, but that the other side of those caveats is beauty beyond anything created before. Eizouken is a love letter to creative vision. The creative process is not an easy process to get through. While we may have a vision laid out before us, that vision may change when we least expect it to. While we may have our own visions, those who we work with may not have those same visions. While our visions are good to us, there is always the chance that they may not be good to another person. Criticism can provide us with insight as to how we can improve, but it also gives us our own share of self-doubt. And self-doubt is the one thing that prevents us from pursuing our creative visions. When we allow self-doubt to take control of ourselves, sometimes there's no going back. It's scary and confusing, but above all else, it is beautiful. Our ability to create and pursue visions in our heads is something that makes us human. We have the ability to imagine anything, but it is up to us to achieve those visions. Eizouken shows that above all self-doubt, all questioning, and all criticism, that to pursue our vision is to pursue our inner self. After all, our visions are an extension of who we are, because our work is only the work that we believe would be best for ourselves. If we allow the words and criticisms of others to get in the way of what we are trying to achieve, we may never reach that vision. But Eizouken shows that breaking through that self-doubt is the one thing most important to pursuing our creative visions. There will be mistakes, there will be errors, and there will be places where we wish we could have done better. But the one thing most important to our vision is that we never lose sight of it. Through our trials and tribulations, we learn from our mistakes, and we learn that the only vision that should matter at the end of the day is the vision we see inside our heads. That very creative vision is the most vital thing to our creative process. So long as we follow that vision, we can't fail. So long as we continue to make and learn from our mistakes, we will improve upon that vision. So long as that vision exists, we will only become better. So long as we become better, we will achieve that vision. Yuasa shows through Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken that above all else, the creative process is the most beautiful thing in the world. It shows that the one thing most important in life isn't how others see your work, but how you see it. It shows that through imagination, those worlds that we create inside of our heads, those mystical worlds that seem so far away, aren't as far away as they may seem. Eizouken is a love letter to the creative process.